So under the watchful eye of Boba Fett, we're going to build ourselves a computer. So I've got all the bits and pieces laid out. So always the first place to start with a computer system, for me anyway, is the motherboard. Tools. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this box over here just to put all of the stuff into that it comes with. We're not going to need a lot of this stuff. Keep the back plate handy. So much packaging. So normally I like to put the motherboard onto a soft surface, and they made this motherboard here. This socket has two interlaying pins just to open up the socket. I can't stress how careful you have to be around these sockets. If you put your finger into those sockets and bend the pins, you can almost throw it away. I've repaired the pins a few times, but it's not very easy. So we're going to put the processor in, always being careful not to touch the bottom or the socket, and you'll find a couple of little lugs, and one's going to be closer than the other one, and that one's closer, and generally the socket will have a little area to one side that you can put it in. So I just like to put it in very carefully. One, two. So that part's done. Alright, next part that we want to do is the RAM. So this type of RAM should have consecutive type serial numbers. All the same serial number. With RAM, you do have to push quite firmly to be able to put it in. So this video isn't really a guide on how to build a computer, it's just watching me put this computer together. Always make sure your RAM's pushed down nice and firmly. Get rid of your rubbish. Alright, so we'll put it aside for the moment. The next thing is really just to get the case sorted. So we're going to get rid of this water cooling kit and put it over here. More stuff to get rid of. Keep your backplate handy. Okay, so this here is the case. This is the Corsair case. The reason why we chose this case is it has front grill that just pops out nice and easy. And doors that just pop off. So what we're going to do is just get rid of these doors because we don't want them to get damaged at all. Okay, so now it's time to get building. Always start with the back plate, chuck her in. Make sure it's pushed all the way. So with this case, all of the mounts already put in there, so all we have to do is just pick the board up, put it in. Normally, when you've got the heatsink and fan already installed, it gives you something just to hold on to. So normally I'd have a little bucket or something to put the screws in, but I'm not at work right now. So from memory, you'd use the coarse thread. It's always a good idea to make sure that you use the right threaded screws. In a case like this, it doesn't really matter in which order you put the screws in because everything lines up really well. You can always tell a good quality case just by how well everything lines up. Also by the power button. If the power button doesn't feel right, get a different case. Okay. And now what we're going to do is to wire up all of these front ports. Okay, so with a build like this, it's all about trying to keep everything as neat and tidy as possible. Okay, so what we're going to do here is start feeding them through. Actually, let me just change that cable. I like to have just these cables here. Just with one single plug. I don't want to have the one I just had then had two plugs in it. I want to have as fewer cables in this case as possible. Alright, start feeding them through. So normally when I build these type of systems, I'll have the power cords running up to the video cards. But in this situation, I don't want that. I want to have the cables go out and then back through to the video cards. Just try and create as neat a wiring job as possible. Oh, that was definitely different to the last one I did. So now that we've got all of those cables through, the next job is just to get rid of all of the extra wiring. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to pop a few cables just from the back and just leave as little cable showing as possible. So these ones here are the front panel connectors. Power switch. Reset switch. Hard drive power connector, always upside down. And we want positive here, negative there. This should be wired up connector correctly. And all we need is the USB. So we'll just pop the USB through here as well. Okay, so that's what we're going to pop through. We've got the USB 3 header here, but these USB 3 headers are quite badly designed in that the plug is massive, big and heavy, and the socket it goes into is small, and it's very easy for them to come out. So we need to mount this last to try and secure it tight, because generally they pop out very, very easily. I don't know who designed it, but they never built a computer, that's for sure. Another thing is that this case has a SATA power connector for these 4 fans. There's a button on the front that controls these 4 fans, and it's powered by a SATA power connector. 100 times better than a Molex power connector, because if that was Molex, I'd have to run a whole cable from that power supply just to power this. But because it's SATA, I can pull a feed off the hard drives, a SATA power connector real easy. One of these ones. Love it. So this case is actually a really, really good case. Its major design flaw is here. So this is where a lot of the air can either come in or out, and you need to remove this. And it's magnetic. It's actually quite nice, but the problem is if you want fans up here, you have to take this off. There's nowhere for the air to go. So it's either on or off. So other than that, this case is quite nice. That's its pretty crappy part, to be honest. Right, I'm going to go get some cable ties. I'll be back in 1 second. So for the water cooling kit, what we're going to do is we're going to have the air come into the case from the front and then go out through the case through the power supply. I'm sorry, not through the power supply, through the rear fan and the radiator. So this is going to create a slight negative pressure in the case, but with these video cards it's going to get quite warm in there, so we just want to get the hot air out. Okay, let's see how we're going to do this. From memory, what we're going to do is we want these fans to blow out. So generally they'll have a casing here, and usually they'll have an arrow on the fan. These don't have an arrow, but I know the fan blows this way. And when you're building the case, you got to always think of where the cable goes. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the fans like this with both the cables in the one position. So that will help with our cable management later on. How did I do this last time? That's right, screws. Water cooling screws. So with the water cooling kit, Usually they'll be designed for multi-sockets. So I've already done one of these, so I found the screws were actually not long enough. They were just a fraction too short. So what we're going to do, we're going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to use a little bit of tape just to hold it in. But before we do that, I need to actually move all of these rubber grommets. So these are already positioned in the 120mm position, so we're just moving them into the 140mm position. Up here. No? Up here. Rubber grommets are always going to be good for sound dampening. You're always going to be better off mounting something into something soft. Yeah. Something isn't quite right. No, that's right. So, I believe we have our mounting, it's not quite correct. Okay, mounting correct. So remember, position the fan cable to the center, or in this situation down here, and then use some screws just to hold it in place. This is what I call the cheating method, but you got to do what you got to do. As my old man used to say, you have to use what you've got. Okay, so just one more time, remember cable being in the center next to the other cable to reduce our cable management, and you want to make sure that the air is flowing the correct direction, so this air is going to flow out. So this is probably one of the most crucial parts of the build, just to make sure you get this right. Again, use a little bit of tape. And this will just help, just to hold everything in place, to screw it up. I already know that this water cooling kit will not fit with the water pipes over here. You must put the water pipes over here. This fan just gets in the way. Okay, so I've just done up 2 screws, and this is the true test. The quality of the equipment you're installing. No, the screws aren't going up that easy. first one I did went up real well. So you don't want the screws are too tight. Just sort of like a finger tight with an extra quarter turn or so. Alright, so she's mounted quite well. Okay, so I've already been through the instructions on the water cooling kit, so I'd strongly recommend that you check the instructions out so I know exactly what bits and pieces I need to be able to construct this. So I don't need those. But we do need these. How do these go again? Okay, so I'm pretty sure these go in like this. So depending on the socket will depend on how they go together. So please check your user manual and instructions how to do this. So bear in mind I've already done one of these systems identical. So that's why I can just grab it and do it. Even me, I'd still need to read the instructions because it's not something you do every day. Okay, so what we're doing is we're just setting up the retention clip to be able to hold the water cooling ball. So, you know, with a computer like this, it's very much a visual aesthetics. And so what we're going to do, even though the water block wants to sort of mount this way, we're going to turn it and mount it this way just to show off the name of the brand of the product, which is Corsair. And no, I'm not being sponsored by them. And please, Corsair, don't take this video down just because I'm using your products. Okay, so it mounts like that, and this guy, how did this guy go again? He clips over here just to make it look nice and pretty. No, this way maybe. This way. So I think this guy clips over like this. Just to hold everything in place. And then it's simply just a matter of checking everything's okay. And mounting it on. These days, these types of installations are really good in that they usually you can't screw it up, you can't over tighten it. You just do it up and it's done. In the old days, you had to be really careful. Like for example, what I'm doing now is just a quarter turn in, quarter turn in, and then you just go in a pattern, turn, that one in, no, turn, and just generally go around in a 1, 2, 3, 4 diagonal type pattern until it was all done. So these will all go tight in a minute. There we go, done. You know you've done a good job when it gets that last turn and they're all in the same position. Alright. So I'll plug this into here for now. So that's going to power the little water pump in there, I believe. We've got this fan. So I already built this system, and what we're going to do with this is we're going to connect the two front fans and the two water cooling fans to the fan control unit. And this one here, we're going to let the motherboard control. So what we're going to do is try and create as short a run as possible here. So we've created as short a run as possible with this, which is, to be honest, not quite short enough, but it will do. And we're just going to plug it into this fan header right here, which is conveniently located perfectly for a rear case fan. Thank you very much, Asus, for doing that. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we'll chuck some hard drives in there. So we'll just put this down on the ground for a moment. Look at that, perfect container for screws. Okay, so the way these go in is they push in and the power connectors are at the back. So this case comes with some convenient small little screws, but I have these hard drive things in here which are a pain in the bum. Oh, we'll just pull out. I just want to screw it in there, nice and quick. One done. Alright, so we'll pull this guy out. And this guy in. So yeah, solid state hard drives, best thing since sliced bread. Absolutely love solid state hard drives. I could add fill my computer with just solid state hard drives. And so this guy should just pop in on the side, and I just sort of flex the plastic out, done. So what we'll do is we'll just get rid of some of this stuff here. Keep this. Don't need that. Don't need these. Keep one of those bags. Okay, so So what we're going to do is slot the hard drives into there. Put the power cables in. And there should be one around here. So what I'm doing is just bringing the 8-pin power connector from the back up to the top, and we're just going to plug it in here, just being careful. Not too. Damage the radiator. So what I'm doing now is just pulling some crap off the side, just to get ready to run SATA cables for the hard drives. Okay, so the next thing we'll put in the video cards. So with this computer system, because we're using two high-performance video cards, we need to know which slots are actual full-speed slots. So on this computer, only 2 of these slots are 16 times PCI Express slots. So we want to put both of the video cards into the high-speed slots to ensure that we get full-speed SLI performance from the system. So as always, just be careful handling these. And before we chuck them in, we're going to pull this plastic off. No point in having plastic in a computer that's going to get hot. There we go. So we'll screw that up. So we just continue just to remove the bits that we need to be able to install a second video card. again, just being careful as you handle these video cards. Now what we're going to do now is we're just going to feed some of these cables back through. Okay, so we're going to work on feeding some of these cables back through just to power up the video card. So what I'm doing is just trying to shape the cables to go in the direction that I want. I'm very awkward trying to do it like this. Normally I like to build my computers on a chair, and the chair has like a swivel base on it, and so I just sit the computer on there and I just sit next to it and I just swivel the computer around to exactly where I want it positioned. I guess if I try putting it on the right way, it helps, doesn't it? There we go. So I kind of want this to be positioned sort of like this. What we'll do is I'll just run a cable tie here. Just to hide this little fella. Another cable tie here. So one more time, we're just going to run this cable over here, so just shape it how you want it. So it's very important to shape the cables to get the direction. You really don't want to have too much stress and tension on the cable pulling on cards. So that's why it's important just to shape it how you want it. And there we go. Okay, so that's looking pretty good right now. Again, I'll just try and hide this cable a little bit. So that there is the majority of the build done. So one of the final touches is to connect the SLI connector. Okay, so basically that's most of the computer build done. So we have the motherboard, cooling kit, power supplies connected, we've got power, we've got the RAM in, we've got the video cards in. So in theory this computer will turn on right now. So it still needs a little bit of work to manage all of the cables and things like that. So if you really want to see that type of stuff, let me know and I'll include some videos where I do some other computer builds like that. But that here was the majority of the build for this system. The rest of it's just DVD drive and just tidying up all of the cables out here. So I'll take a few pictures once I go to work. And also you've got to do the SATA cabling. The SATA cabling is actually a bit of a pain in the ass. It's a bit of work involved just doing that. So I'll go do all of that at work and I'll take a few photos and I'll put it at the end of this video so you can see what she looks like. Thank you very much for watching my video. This has just been a quick demonstration how to put together a high-end gaming system. Thanks. Okay, so now we're beginning the final stage of the build, which is just organizing and putting all the cables in. So I like to start with the SATA cables because they tend to take up a little bit of space just here in the back. So I just want to move some of these cables aside and start to feed the SATA cables through. So it's quite important that you want to try and put your system drive into port 0 and to also take note of the high-speed SATA ports. So you want to try and plug your new hard drives into the SATA 6 gigabit speed SATA ports. So all of these fan cables are a little bit in the way for the moment, so I'm just going to use a cable tie just to hold them up out of the way while I work on the SATA ports. So I like to keep two SATA cables together because as they plug in one above each other. So it just makes sense just to keep them together. And then what I'll do is I'll plug the third one in and just try and run it down with it as well. You'll see in the back in a moment. So what I'm trying to do is just, you don't want to fight your cabling. You want to try and let the cabling fall where it feels most less stressed. So you don't want to try and bend your cables in an unnatural way. You just want them just to sort of sit in a natural sort of position and just try and follow the cables and don't try and fight them. So what I'm doing now is I'm just positioning the two SATA plugs in the distance for the two solid states, and then because the cable's not matched, what I need to do is try and make it as neat as possible, but have the end plugs match. So you'll see one above each other, and I'm trying not to fight the cables as much. I'm just trying to find the best placement for them. So SATA cables don't mind being bent, and I like to sort of just crimp them together. So here you can see me putting the first cable tie in, and you'll see down the end there's just an extra inch or so in the bend, just to allow for the difference in the two at the end of the cables where they connect to the solid states. So now I have my first two SATA cables quite nicely run down to the hard drives, and they'll look quite nice. And so they're ready to be plugged in, and then I'll just have to work on the third SATA cable, which will go to the 4 terabyte hard drive. So there we go, there's the first couple of hard drives connected. And don't be surprised if you can spend significant amount of time doing just these little parts of the build, so don't rush it. Don't expect to be able to do it as quickly as what I'm doing it here on camera. It takes time and experience to really put it together this quickly. So just remember not to rush. So now I'm just positioning the last SATA cable. And this one's a pretty simple one because it's just a single cable by itself. So I'll just put a little bend in the top of it where it plugs in and then bends down, because I want it to follow the same line down as the other SATA cables. And now I'm just working on just bringing it, or just allowing it to follow the other SATA cables. And I'm just tying it up at the top, and then I think I need to put a bend in it somewhere just to make sure that the length works out about correct. There, and that was it. Here's your SATA cables done. So I always recommend just spending a little bit extra time, just allowing your SATA cables just to run in a natural pathway. Don't try and fight them. And that way they're in there nice and solid, they're not going to come out of their connections, and it looks good. Next part I think will be trying to get the power. So trying to tidy the cables up on this back side. It's actually quite time consuming, and Antec put some little metal, like little cutouts that you can put cable ties through, so you can help to manage the cables. You have to be mindful on how much thickness these cables take up. So what you don't see in this video is that once I'd finished all of this, the side of the case didn't quite fit on properly. You couldn't really force the side of the case on. The way it hinges on is quite weak, and so I had to actually spend a little bit more time just flattening the cables. So you just need to be mindful that it's actually quite difficult to keep the cables as close to the side of the case as possible. You have maybe less than an inch space, and you really don't have much margin. So what I'm doing now is I'm just trying to follow the line of the mounts where I'm putting the cable ties now. So these are the USBs, the front audio ports, USB 3. No, USB 3 won't be connected yet, that'll be last. So I'm just checking that my cables are nice and tight, that they're tidy inside, and I'm just pulling them through, and I'm going to want to try and follow the line up the case. So now I'm starting to get these cables a little bit better managed, but I'm just trying to get them to follow the one line up the case. And by doing this, it gives you more anchor points to cable tie other cables to it. And always as you go, you need to just trim off the ends of the cable ties. A good small pair of side cutters are quite handy. I'm using the Duratec yellow side cutters just there, and I find the Duratec screwdrivers and side cutters to be good quality for the price, and I quite like working with them, and I have no complaints. So here I'm just spending a little bit of time on just tidying up the 8-pin motherboard power. This one's a pretty simple one that's just out there by itself. So just remember what I'm doing here is generally going above and beyond what you might do for a normal build, but it's kind of my signature type build where if you take off that side of the case and I look at it, I can tell that I've done it because not many other people will go to the effort or just to do it and keep it tidy. Even though it's not seen, I know it's there, so I like to know that it's just done correctly. So early on in my career in IT, I kind of learnt the importance of cabling aesthetics, and it's not only to look good, it lays things out, it makes it easier to follow. And me personally, when I see an electrician that's wired up a board somewhere in a house or a building and everything's neatly laid, I just appreciate the time and effort that they did to do it. But it also allows you to follow the cables quite easily. When you have a mess of cables, I'm sure some people have come across that, it's very hard to follow them. So most of this build is in pretty much real time, so you can see roughly how long that it's taken me to build it. So you want to allow yourself an extra 2 or 3 times the amount of time to build it, just to, if you want to try and follow what I've done to make it look like it did, or it does. So here I'm just working on all of the thicker power cables, the main motherboard power, the 6 and 8 pin video card power, and I'm just trying to get this part sorted out. So once I've done this, I think I'm going to work on the SATA power, and then I'll work on the fans, and then that's going to be pretty much it. So we still got a little bit of time to go to finish it. As always, nothing ever goes perfectly, and cables might work out in a good length one way, but down the bottom there you can see they're sort of not tidy, so I'm not going to try and fight it. I'm just going to sort of leave them how they are and just try and tuck it in under there. There's still a little bit of space under there. So remember, try not to fight your cabling. You just want to let it lay and position it as simply as possible without stretching it, twisting it, bending it too much. So there you go, I've just tucked it in behind the bottom edge there. And it's a good place down the bottom there to run cables. So I think what I'm going to do is I've got the 2 SATA connections, and I'm going to push them right in underneath all of the main power connectors, and then that will allow me to run them up to the DVD drive and across to the hard drives. The hard drive SATA power connectors are always a little bit difficult. They'll never be positioned correctly, so you'll have to sort of find the best position without them fighting each other. So here I'm just trying to work out which cable I'm going to use where. So I'm just checking. I believe the bottom one I'll probably use for the hard drives, and the top one I'll use for the DVD drive. So again, I just want them just to sit and lay in the position on where they're going to end up. So again, I'm not fighting it. So the bottom one will go to the hard drives, and the top one will just follow its natural course of going upwards to the DVD drive. Oh, it looks like I've lost a little bit of video there, and I've already sort of starting to plug them in. So you'll find that a couple of the SATA connectors will match up a couple of the hard drives, and you'll just need to bend one of the SATA cables back to re-plug back into one of them when they're positioned like this. Something to also consider about hard drives is that they can get very, very, very hot. So it's important to have fans blowing air over your mechanical hard drives. The solid states don't get hot, you don't have to worry about them. But the 3TB, 4TB, 2TB, I've felt hard drives like out in the open, not even in an enclosed case, like just sitting on a desk, get so hot after a diagnostic, you can't hold the hard drive to your face. It burns that much. So hard drives get very, very hot, and heat will generally reduce your lifespan of electrical components. So you want to try and keep them cool. So here is quite a critical part of not critical, but it's an important part of the build that'll save you working or fixing something later on, is the USB 3 header. The cable itself has a huge plug on the end of it, and the socket it plugs into is minutely small. So what I'm doing is I'm plugging it in, and I'm going to anchor the cable. I think I'm going to put it underneath the main power connector, and I'm going to anchor it and allow it to follow the natural bend that it already has in the cable, and anchor it to the 24-pin main power connector. And that way it just can't wiggle its way out. So you just tighten it up nice and tight, and make sure it's plugged in nice and firm, do a wiggle test, and it's done. And it's quite important that you do something like that. And so now I just need to pull the excess USB 3 header cable back through, and I've got to try and find a way to tidy that up. So I think I'm just allowing it to follow the main power connector, and so it looks nice and neat. Okay, so that's most of the cables inside the case are done. So it looks like there's still the 3-pin, 4-pin fan power connector for the water cooling kit, and I'm just using a cable tie just to tidy that one up. So you want to try and keep your cable runs as short as possible. It looks tidy, and then there's less cables that can get stuck into fans. And there we go, so we plug that in, and that should pretty much cover the internal build of the case. There's really not much more to do. So as you can see, there's very, very few cables in there, and it looks quite nice. I have to admit, if you looked inside my case, it doesn't look as nice as that. But I think that's just normal in these type of situations, like my case doesn't look quite as neat as that. But it works. So now I'm just trying to bend the USB 3 cable and just try not to fight it. So I'm just using it to follow up, or to follow that line of cables that I'd already positioned there. So you can see that I'm just going to try and get it to follow the existing cable line that I've already placed there. So I've just put a couple of bends in it. And again, we'll just keep it following that line of cables and put a couple more cable ties in to make it look nice and neat and tidy. Okay, so we just had our little cut and join there. So pretty much that's all done now. So all we need to do is, I think we still need a SATA cable and power cable for the DVD drive, which, oh no, I'm putting the DVD drive in now. So normally I'd put the DVD drive in earlier, but it doesn't really matter. And power cables, like, where do I go? Let's go under here. So there's not a lot you can do in this type of situation. Just try and keep the run as short as possible. And try not to twist it too much. And oh, there we go, quick cut and join, and we're plugging the power in, pushing the DVD drive in, and that's pretty simple, quick and easy. So we'll just need to run a SATA cable up to that, and then that'll be done. Alright, now to try and work out how to run the fan cables. So in this case, on the brackets there that you can see where the cables are coming through, they're actual mounts for solid state hard drives or laptop size hard drives, which is quite unique in the case. I tried to use them, but I didn't really like the positioning, and with all of the cables it was going to be really difficult to put solid states in there. So I just stuck the solid states down the bottom where I'm more familiar with cabling them up. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the cables up these mountings just to sort of keep them hidden again. And yeah, so I'm just trying to find the best way to run both of the cables. So as we discussed earlier, we want to connect the 2 front fans and the 2 top fans for the radiator. To the fan control, so that it can be controlled. The rear fan is quite a high quality fan, and being plugged into the motherboard can actually control the speed of it a little bit. So as you can see here, I'm just running the cables along the mounting of these plastic solid state brackets. Again, just to keep them hidden, and again, just to follow natural lines of the equipment that you have instead of just running everywhere. Okay, so that part's done, and now we come to the fun part. It's almost like I feel like a hairdresser here trying to straighten the hair or get it into the position I want. So I'm just running it under some of these main cables because I'm concerned about when the side of the case closes. I don't want too much thickness of cables to prevent it from closing, which was actually the case after I did all of this. I had to use more cable ties to flatten the cables as close to the mounts as possible. So I had to actually spend a little bit more time after all of this just to get it as thin as possible so the side would close on it. So as you can see, all of the cables are just hanging down, and see, I'm not fighting anything here, I'm just plugging it in. So I'm just plugging in the power. So I love the fan controller using a SATA power cable. It saves me running another cable and trying to hide another cable with Molex power. But I think I forgot that I needed to plug this in during this point in time, so it wasn't the best positioning. But you do what you got to do. Alright, let's start plugging these fans up. That's the easy part. So as you can see, none of the cables are really fighting each other. They're just hanging down in a very natural position. So it just allows me, when I try and bundle them all up, means I'm not fighting anything more. So it's just all hanging down nice and natural. And here comes the fun part. So I'm just trying to find like a natural balance of of where the cables will sort of bend over and just match up evenly. Okay, so our build is coming very quickly to an end. So in this last section, it's just mostly been cabling the rear part of the backside of the computer, which, to be honest, will be never ever seen. But I know it'll be there, and one day the computer will come back to me and I'll clean the dust out of it, service it, fix it, repair it, and I will take the side of the case off and I'll look at it and I'll go, yep, I did this one. And that's pretty much it. So I'm just trying to find a little hole in there to fit it in there as best as possible. And that is that. So I'll just spin it around a couple times just so you can have a look at how it looks. Sorry the lighting is not that good. This was just at work, so to be honest, I was just trying to do this as quickly as possible. But this is like a real-time version on how long it would take for me to do something like this. Alright, she's all done. Let's have a look at her. And there is one hell of an ultimate gaming system. And just pulling off the tape that I used to hold the radiator in when I installed it. And there you go. One very beautiful high-end gaming case. And if they ever look over here, at least they won't be disappointed.